is where we discuss the possibilities.
Hey guys, I'm Dr. Kori Propst at the Diet Doc Health Psychologist, and I'm here with Dr. Joe Klemczewski, founder of the Diet Doc. Welcome back to the Diet Doc Life Mastery podcast. Today we're in our Motivational Mastery segment, and we're going to touch on goals. Why goals? Joe, I received this message from a client, actually a potential client, who is just kind of struggling with where she's at and what she should do and why she should do it. And she said, I feel so lost when I don't have in my mind a big goal or a vision like competition. This is an individual who has competed in physique before, and I think she's kind of in between and not really knowing what direction to head in. And she said, I need some goal, but I don't want to rely on it all of my life. She said, I feel angry and I feel sad all the time. And I'm laughing, and that's not appropriate, but she said, I'm not happy. I think I'm laughing because I've been there.
I'm laughing because you just said it's not appropriate to laugh, so I'm chiming in.
Potential client, if you're out there, my apologies. Like, I feel like I understand you, and I think most of the listeners or the watchers have been in that space where they're like, what do I do? I'm not quite sure which direction to head in and what's important to me. And I think that's a really important space to be in, and to be okay sitting within and to kind of be with that tension. And we'll get into that, but it's part of why I think goals are awesome, because they force us into that space. But on a ground level, goals provide us with a sense of purpose. They give us a sense of meaning. And if we look at like goal setting theory, it suggests that goals lay the foundation for mastery and for learning, and they actually promote a sense of motivation, which is vitality and enthusiasm. I think that I was struck by the part of her statement when she said, you know, relying on a goal. I don't want to rely on a goal for the rest of my life. And, you know, having a pursuit of some sort is, in my mind, it's not something that we need to necessarily feel a level of disdain for. It's like something that it sounds to me like she feels like she's clinging to it and grasping to it for something. And rather than look at it with a level of disdain, I think that we can shift that to look at goals as a very human process, because humans just naturally desire movement and growth and optimization and kind of shifting towards this sense of excellence in a lot of ways. But I think that sense of disdain, it is something that can occur. You know, for example, when we set a goal and then we get somewhat through the process a little bit and we find out that we have competing goals or conflicting goals. We're going for one thing and we're going for another, but those two things require different mindsets or different strategies, and they don't quite meld so well. And when a goal is overly challenging, for example, we're not going to thrive in that environment. I mean, optimally, goals that feel vital to us, goals that feel momentum building and that support a level of vitality and passion and excitement are the ones that are just slightly above our comfort zones. So there is a little bit of discomfort because we're not quite there yet. We haven't mastered the skill or the ability or the capacity to get to that next level. But if it is so far away from where we are currently, and there is a massive gap between where we are now and where we need to be to reach that goal, which is an outcome, that's when we're in a very precarious position of potentially and quite possibly giving up. And so there are, like, we could get into the various factors that move us closer to that place where the goal becomes just too much and too heavy. But I think for this podcast purposes, I really kind of want to stay grounded in why goals in the first place. How come they're important? What puts us on a path with a goal that helps us to feel like we're thriving?
Right. And if I could add even just a little bit of structure to where you want to head with the actual topic, I go back to her comment as well. And I think the reason you laughed is, as a therapist, I'm always just in awe of your ability, as you being a therapist and other therapists, being able to see the big picture of where somebody's at and what they really need at the most foundational base level, emotional struggle. And that may just be a quantum distance. And yet, you can only give them this next step to get to this next step, to get this. And so, for her to say, I need a goal, or I'm not going to even be able to live. I'm sad and desperate. I love that authenticity. But at the same time, I think it gives somebody like you and me that tug that, we could go into first world problems, and really is that, because you don't have a bodybuilding type goal, are you going to die? Is your life over?
Sure.
But it might feel that way, right? And so you have to say, look, this could be so overwhelming to this person and true, genuine desperation, but it's not the goal. It's not the physique goal. There has to be something else. And for her not to know that, and you to know that that's where you're going to have to start digging, that's to me kind of the humor. It's almost like the omnipotent narrator knowing what's going on before the reader knows.
Sure. And so to your point, I read her email and it's like, well, wait a second. So what's important to you? Let's start there, because unless we get down to what your values are and what you appreciate in life and who you're wanting to be and how you're wanting to show up and move into the various contexts of your life, then the goal you set it's not going to be fulfilling.
Right. Because you're
as a framework.
Yeah. If the goal is this particular look or date or contest or event of some sort, I know you eventually are going to get down to at the ego level, why do you need to look a certain way to be acceptable to yourself or acceptable to somebody else, to feel competent, to feel what? Like what do we really need to accomplish? Because once that goal is done, once that date on the calendar has passed, once that body fat composition line has been crossed, is your life amazing now? Is it perfect?
Right. Now, are you happy? Probably not. You're probably as unhappy as you were before, because that outcome that you succeeded in getting to that place is now gone. You got a brief dopamine hit and now you're back to your baseline happiness level. So thank you for that, Joe. I think that this leads us into how a goal is an outcome. So let's look at weight loss. I set a goal that I'm going to lose 25 pounds. Okay. Well, 25 pounds is way out here. It's an outcome. That's in like an event, basically. It shows up and then it's gone, right? So how do we use a goal in a way that's going to help facilitate a sense of effectiveness, a sense of autonomy, a sense of competence, right? A sense of greater connectedness with ourselves and with other people? Because at a bare bones level, if we look at all of the research that shows who are the people that live the most vital, enthusiastic lives with a sense of purpose and meaning, it's the individuals who have those three needs met. Because you said, like, what does she need? Well, she needs autonomy, sense of volition. She's picked the goal. No one else has said, you have to do this goal. You have to accomplish this. She needs a sense of effectiveness in managing the circumstances of her life. And the goal path can help her create that. And then she needs a sense of connection, a sense of belonging. Ultimately, this goal of hers gets her more in touch, like we talked about earlier, with what's important to her. What are her values? What are her principles? Who does she want to be? And connected with the world at large and other people who are important to her. But so if a goal outcome is going to facilitate those three things happening, then I think what we need to pay more attention to than the goal is the systems that we have in place to get there. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I'm skipping ahead too. You've trained me too well in this vortex of everything we could be talking about with the goals. I immediately sink down to that end point, and I'm going to call it ego dissolution, because for her, again, one step at a time, one step at a time, one step at a time, understanding all of these layers of who we are and what we need. But if you really want to be happy and content, you have to get to a point where you just really don't give a shit about a lot of that stuff that you give a shit about right now. So I'll give you an example. I always talk about this. A local car company of exotic luxury cars, their motto for years has been, what's in your driveway? So it's not about the features of the car and all the great bells and whistles. It's just your status. Well, they've recently just changed from what's in your driveway to you can turn heads this summer.
Ooh.
So if you just get in this car, everybody's going to be looking at you. And man, I'm sure they're killing it, because that kind of ego inflation is where most of us are. But that's, so should our goal be to get that car? Should our goal be like, that's the goal? Our goal should be to not care what.
Yes.
So I agree. Like, I want to go through all of those steps because goals are important. We are humans. I'll pass the ball back to you with this comment. When I went to see a therapist for personal relationship and just personal life coaching, this therapist asked, with this issue we were discussing, how much time do you spend thinking about this on a daily basis? Yeah. And I said, about 50%. And she goes, and her face just dropped. She goes, really? And she's gonna like cart me off to the emergency room. But and she said, okay, that's serious. Like we've got to get that down. But with a goal, something has to consume you enough so that nothing else matters. And I think of the person who might struggle. This potential client, is obviously not hitting a stride with meeting her goals, and she feels desperate and sad that she's not getting any traction. If there was a goal big enough, if it was something intrinsic and not so superficial, you and I have both had goals that it didn't matter. I mean, we didn't only crush the goal, we achieved more than the goal. It was easy to do because we were able to prioritize it. It was just a big deal. So I want to echo what my therapist was saying, in that if something is consuming you in a negative way, that's a good metric. That's bad. But if it's a positive goal that you really want to achieve and it means that much to you, it has to mean more than everything else. You have to make room for it. So am I on track with that assessment?
Yeah, yes. And I'm going to come back to the word I used before, which is having systems in place and focusing more on the system than the actual outcome. Because the systems that you have in place are the strategies that you're using every single day. And when you say the goal has to be bigger than anything else, I'm looking at the system as being bigger than anything else. These are the daily disciplines that we're engaged in that are bigger than the goal. So they make it possible to surpass the goal, just like you said. It becomes easy because we're less focused on the future and what can feel like it's so far out there. And this hits home for me because we work with so many people who have a lot of weight that they want to lose. When someone comes to us and they've got 50, 75, 100 pounds to lose, I mean, that's way out there. That it isn't something that if they just focus on the future, they're going to become overwhelmed and likely give up. So it's today, it's right now. What system do I have in place? What's the daily discipline that I'm going to be engaged in? And it's that engagement that I feel like you're speaking to. It's that like consumption, positive consumption of this is important to me. This is what I want to become as I'm going to that future thing. But it's less focused on, like you said, status, money, looks, image. That's that external, superficial stuff that it can drive us. And it drives a lot of people. And it drives them for some length of time. But a goal that's focused on those things is not going to be enduring. And like you said, it's not going to give us that positive sense of vitality and energy that so many of us are wanting when we set a goal in the first place.
If in my larger point, because I totally agree, those daily disciplines, the systems in place, you've got to construct the path that you can follow, but it can be easy or it can be a total drag. If every day taking those steps, even if you had a perfect system, are just a grind that you hate and you're not into it, you got the wrong goal. You just do. You got the wrong reason. You're addressing the wrong value. There's something missing at a more foundational level. So, you got to get your ladder up against the right wall before you're halfway up and realize you're doing it for the wrong reason. Because again, you and I, we've done things that have been both ways, right? Like something that is a monumental goal you want to achieve, you will get there and it's going to happen. You reorganize your life to make it that way because it's meaningful enough. If you sat in desperation and every day was just a misstart and it wasn't happening, it doesn't matter what system you have. It's the absolute wrong value.
And I don't want people to get the wrong idea about if you're uncomfortable and it's a grind, that it's the wrong goal every time. Because I sat in the uncomfortable, grindy place for 5 years with my PhD.
I disagree a little bit though, because being hard or being difficult or being challenging is not the same as you could have quit a million times, but you didn't.
Correct.
You just did what it took.
Is that if it's hard and grindy, it doesn't mean that it's the wrong goal, guys. But you have to come back to your greater purpose. Right. Why are you doing it? How come it's important to you? How is it going to impact your life? And ideally, the lives of other people, because we've had we've hit on this before. When I am able to accomplish something big, a goal out there in the future that's going to take a lot of work and grinding, and there's some cost to it, guys. Big goals have costs. And the individuals who set goals the right way sit down and they're like, okay, I'm making a decision here. This is more than just an I want to do this. This is an I will do this. And here is what I'm going to have to let go of in order to make it happen. But the goals that endure, the ones that we persist with, are the ones that are not easy. Mm-hmm. They're not easy. They are difficult. They are challenging, but they oftentimes serve a bigger purpose than just getting some personal need met. Other people are typically affected in a positive way when we move towards the outcome we're aiming for.
Yeah, and I think as a way to conclude the first segment in what I think is going to be a great series on goal setting, we both agree that we have to have goals.
Yes.
But you have to have the right reason. And I'll give you this example. You mentioned your PhD. Perhaps the hardest degree for me was just college. Mm. And so here I was in a big city where I didn't know anybody except my wife. And I'm, we just have no money, paying for this as we go. So you know the story. I'm cleaning parking lots at 3 a.m. in downtown Indianapolis. I'm doing catering Friday and Saturday nights. I'm working in a bookstore Saturdays. I'm cleaning houses on Sundays. I was working 4 and 5 jobs at a time while I was in physical therapy school, 40 hours a week, and I loved it. It was hard, but there was never a sense of, oh my gosh, I'm so desperate. I'm so sad. I can't do this. Mm-hmm. I was going to find a way, period. Mm-hmm. And I think if your goals are that meaningful and they drive you to be able to accept and meet challenges, you've got the right goal. If you just sit there and never feel like you can do it, and
I have to say this, Joe, like if you're finding yourself in that space, that's a real opportunity to ask yourself, what is this? Maybe it's the goal itself. Maybe it is, but maybe it's the mindset that you've moved into the goal with, the attitude that you're adopting as you're pursuing the goal. There are so many questions that when you feel that heaviness and that constrictedness and that rigidity and that sense of chaos come on, to say, hang on a second. Wait. Hopefully you chose the goal, like you chose it. It wasn't someone else saying you have to do this, breathing down your neck. But if you chose it, then you can also choose your approach for achieving it. And so maybe in the next segment, what we can talk about is what are called lay theories. These are the ways in which the approaches we take for anything that we're moving into that is important to us. And there's an entity theory, and then there's an incremental theory. This is just a way of thinking that sets us on very different paths within our goal pursuits. So thank you for sharing your story, Joe. Yeah, it clearly what you were going through was not easy at all, super challenging. You were very fatigued, and yet imagine what it would have been like for you if you were just doing that and you didn't have a family and you didn't have kids. And
I don't look backwards, only fondly. I loved every day. I felt it a privilege to be working that hard and have the opportunity to be accomplishing that goal. There was never a sense of this might have been more than I should be tackling. Yeah. I was just going to find a way. And I think that's what I mean by having an intrinsically driving goal. Mm-hmm. We know a million stories of people who can do things that are almost inhuman. Mm-hmm. And then everybody else sits around saying, wow, why can't I do that? That's such an amazing human being. I wish I could do that. And, you can. And I love that we're doing this series because there are definitely steps to take and habits and disciplines and knowledge that we're going to be able to work through in this series. But I just want to make sure that whatever I can contribute to this first part of why goals, it better be because you want this change more than anything and you're willing to pay that price.
And what is the change going to be? Right? Outside of just the outcome, like you getting your physical therapy degree, how is it changing you as a person? Those are the best goals. So
yeah, and that's to your point, it's who do you want to be? It wasn't just, hey, this will be a cool piece of paper to hang on my wall. It was the core value of my occupation and career and who I was going to be as a person, how I'm going to contribute to the world and my family. So those are very, very central values.
Joe, real quick, because I know we're out of time and we need to wrap this up. When I was going through the actual dissertation writing process, I had a journal that I used on a daily basis to document what I was going through personally and what I was learning about myself as I'm going through this process. And it was really interesting because what I was looking into with all of my participants in my study was how they were perceiving threats as they were perceiving goals, as they were pursuing goals. And I'm like one of those participants. I'm pursuing a goal, and there are times when I start feeling threatened. So it was super enlightening for me. And just the act of the journaling process and reflecting upon what I'm going through as they're going through their stuff, that kept me going. Like,
good idea.
Well, it reminded me, I'm not all by myself. All of these people who have chosen to be a part of my study are going through this on a daily basis too. I'm not in this own little world of my own. It is much bigger and broader. And so, okay, guys, any final words, Joe?
No, I just want to say thank you for your diligence and expertise in this field. And I know as we go through this Motivational Mastery series on goal setting, it's going to impact a lot of people. So I'm excited to hear what you got next.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you. And please subscribe on iTunes. Leave a comment. Let us know what you appreciate and want to hear more of. And we'll be back soon. Thanks again.